Today I want to tell you about a show I've been watching that I'd never heard anyone talk about until I started watching it, which is a shame because it's quickly become one of my favorite shows currently running. I've come to find that this show does have a fandom, but it deserves a lot more eyeballs on it than it currently has. It's as good as any of the big streaming hits, better than many of them actually. It's heading into its 4th season next year, and I think more people should be watching it. I think you should be watching it. It's a show called From. Why is this show relatively obscure? Well, I have a theory. Yeah, that'd do it. From is an MGM Plus original series, a streaming service which, fun fact, you might not have known this, exists. I know trying to sell you on an MGM Plus subscription is a tall order, I get it, so all I'm going to say is that I think this show is definitely worth the price of a 1-month subscription to watch it, and also, they have a 1-week trial, and it's only 30 total episodes right now. My one-sentence pitch for From would be like Lost with a dash of Stephen King. If you're not sold, give me a chance to explain why you still might like this show. If that does sound good to you though, go watch it. This show is a really fun ride. The less you know going in, the better. Go! I'm using clips from the show in this video, so it'll definitely be demonetized. What do I care if you watch the rest of the video? Don't like, don't comment, don't subscribe. Get out. From is in a very specific subgenre that I like to call the big mystery show. You could also call these mystery box shows, or, if you want to be glib, Lost clones. Shows where there's one, big mystery, often something inexplicable, that the series builds a mythology around, spanning the entire show, and where the bulk of the show is usually watching a large cast of characters react to that mystery. Not always trying to solve it, but to see how their lives adapt to it. This isn't just any serialized show with a mystery to solve, mind you. It's more specific than that. Heroes is in this subgenre, Supernatural isn't. The reason I don't like calling these Lost clones is that while the touchstone for this type of show is, for many people, Lost, it wasn't the first example of it. Twin Peaks. The big mystery is the death of Laura Palmer, but if you've seen Twin Peaks, you know there's a lot more to it than that. It's about this weird town, the weird people that live in it, and the interpersonal drama that unfolds during the investigation. The 4400, a show predating Lost by a few months. The big mystery is that 4,400 people who were believed to have been abducted by aliens between the years 1946 and 2004 all suddenly reappear at once, and also they've got superpowers now. We watch them reintegrate into society, and for some of them, try to understand what happened to them and why. Lost. The big mystery is...
where are we?
What exactly is the island, and why do strange things happen there? Is there a rational explanation for everything, or is there something paranormal on the island? Man of science, man of faith. Most of the show is watching the characters try to survive on an island where everything is out to kill them. You get it. Flash forward, The Event, Wayward Pines, Manifest, Heroes, Revolution. These shows were really common for a while, and most of them were quite bad. So what is From's big mystery? The show starts by showing us a small American town as night falls. The sheriff, played by Lost alumnus Harold Perrineau, walks down the street ringing a bell. The town itself is clearly off, with people going about their days among abandoned and overturned cars and overgrown streets. As they hear the bell, the diner closes and people hurry home. As night comes, we get to see what these people are so scared of. A young girl and her mother are locked up tight in their home. The mother is securing all the windows and keeping them covered. The girl hears a knock at the window and opens her blind. An old woman stands there and tempts her into opening the window to let her in. The moment she does, her face turns monstrous.
Let me go!
The title drops, From, as a haunting cover of Que Sera Sera by the Pixies, plays over images of the dark woods, the sinister town, and what looks like ominous children's drawings of monsters. The town we see in the opening is, obviously, not what it seems. On the surface, it looks like the kind of tiny one-street town that you pass through all the time if you take a road trip through the United States. The more you look at it, though, the less sense the town makes. There's a motel sign and a pool, but no motel. There's a travel agency sign hanging outside one of the buildings, the kind of business that would never have existed in such a small town. Later, we find out that the wires carrying electricity to the appliances in the town are fake. They're just rubber all the way through. And yet, the appliances still work when they're plugged in. This town is an eldritch location, and once you've set foot in it, you can never leave. You can drive out of town in a straight line down the road, and you end up coming right back into town from the other side. The people who have found themselves here were driving in places all over the country, Maine, California, Washington State, yet they all somehow found themselves in this same place. This is maybe a brain-poisoned comparison to make, but it reminds me a lot of the Infinite IKEA, actually, if it were, a town and not an IKEA. By day, the people trapped have started to build lives for themselves, as we see in the intro. There's a sheriff, a doctor, even a diner that serves food. At night, though, everyone has to stay locked inside, protected by mysterious talismans. The monsters can't force their way inside, they have to be let in, but once they're let inside, they tear you to shreds. At first, it seems like this is a vampire story, and there are some similarities to vampires, obviously, but they don't turn the people they've killed, and they don't feed on them either. They only want to kill as gruesomely as possible. I can't show it here, but the show does not shy away from gore. They want to keep the people of the town scared of them. They're also not the only monsters in this story. In fact, as time goes on, we find out they might be the least of the threats this strange town has in store for its victims. So, the victims who are stranded in this town try to survive the threats it throws at them, fight amongst themselves, build new lives in an inexplicable and dangerous place, and hope to find a way home. To talk about why From feels special, I think we need to talk about Lost. From has a lot of similarities to Lost, and it wears that inspiration on its sleeve. I mean, even the name, From, feels like it's trying to raise memories of the older four-letter word show. For the record, I am a Lost enjoyer. You might not believe me by the end of this section, but I like Lost a lot. I followed it at the time, I thought it was a good show then, and I think it's overall a good show now. That said, Lost had a lot of problems. As a long-suffering Lost fan, I can tell you a ton of things that bother me about the show right off the top of my head. Spoilers for Lost, I guess? Are we still doing that? This show is old enough to vote now. The pacing in the middle seasons got bad. They would introduce characters and then kill them off without satisfactory endings for shock value. The show outgrew the flashback format after its first season, ran out of interesting things to show, and didn't get that magic back until they shifted to the flash forwards in the finale of season 3. I can forgive all of that for the things the show does well. The overall plot of the show, not trying to solve the lore and world building, but just watching these survivors and the drama between them is very compelling. The actors on the show are fantastic and often elevate the material. Michael Emerson as Benjamin Linus makes for one of the best villains in the history of television, and that's only one of like 4 performances on the show that are equally good. And yeah, it's something of a meme at this point to defend Lost by saying, well, sure, the show sucks, but the characters were good. But there's a lot of truth to that. It turns out I'd rather watch a bad Hurley episode than most other TV shows. These are things that From gets right. I think what really sells the show is that it nails the fundamentals. The tone is impeccable. From has a wonderful sense of atmosphere pouring out of every frame of the show. The sound design is great, the set is amazing, the acting is mostly fantastic, and the monster makeup and gore effects look incredible. These are things that I've seen many of these shows, especially the ones in the wake of Lost, fail. The big mystery is not enough to sustain a show on its own. The big mystery actually has to be somewhat de-emphasized for these shows to work. The experience of watching the show minute to minute needs to be first and foremost engaging, or else you get something like The Event that's flat out boring for nearly its entire runtime. I think there's a more specific lesson that From has learned from Lost, though, and that's not to waste time teasing non-supernatural explanations for the mystery. Contrary to popular opinion, Lost did answer most of the questions it set up. Not all, but most. The problem is, Lost is a supernatural show. The final season reveals that the island is home to two magic men, Jacob and the Man in Black, who have been fighting on this island for centuries.
Two sides. One is light, one is dark.
Everyone and everything else is just caught up in their wizard duel. The reason that Lost to this day has so many angry former fans who will swear it left everything unanswered and wasted their time is that the answer to most of these questions is literally a wizard did it. A bad answer is still an answer. Through the first 5 seasons, one of the core themes of Lost is man of science, man of faith. The backbone of the show was the tension between Jack, who only believes what he can rationally explain, and Locke, who is desperate to believe in anything bigger than the mundane. The show implicitly asks, which are you, the viewer? Are you a man of science? Do you think there's a rational explanation for everything that happens on the island? Or are you a man of faith? Have they stumbled across an island full of miracles? In its final season, Lost tips the scales all the way in the favor of faith. There is no rational explanation for Jacob or the Man in Black. They are wizards. The ending of Jack's storyline is about him accepting that he, the skeptic, needs to believe in the magic of the island, believe that he has a predetermined destiny, and that he needs to sacrifice himself for the sake of something he cannot rationally explain. To answer the Joker's question,
how come it all ended in a church?
That's why it all ended inside of a church. Man of faith wins. Symbolism, you see. For many viewers who saw themselves on the man of science side of things, that was always going to feel like a betrayal. So when those supernatural answers that came down to a wizard did it arrived, many viewers simply rejected them, didn't even process them as answers, came to hate the show. This is not a mistake which From repeats. Very early on in From, we are told that there are 2 kinds of people who show up in the town. There are the people who adapt, who see the nightmares this town throws at them, and accept that this is their new status quo, and there are the people who want to find a logical explanation for everything. The ones who survive tend to be the ones who adapt, and don't go looking for answers. We get to see what happens to the ones who don't. A very good decision this show makes is to have the characters on the show ask the same questions the audience is probably asking. If you watch this show, you will see characters ask each other, are we all dead? Did none of us survive making it to this town? And are we all just guinea pigs in some mad science experiment? In fact, one of the characters asks the town priest, Father Khatri, if they're all dead, and he gives the perfect response.
Would it matter? I mean, for argument's sake, let's say we're dead. And we're all stuck here together in some strange, tormented purgatory. What would be different? We'd still be stuck. We'd still be searching for a way to go home. All that would change is the home we're searching for.
Yeah.
That's the perfect answer both to the character and the audience. Let go of that question, because it doesn't change anything. We get to see what happens when people can't let go of that question and others like it, and, well, I won't spoil it because you should watch the show, but safe to say it's nothing good. From is a supernatural show. It's not being coy about it. There are monsters in the show. There's a strange looping town that people arrive in from all over the country. The wires don't have wires in them. The show does not try to convince the audience that there's a rational explanation for everything. Despite that, one of the smartest choices that From makes is to have characters who are in-universe trying to figure out how the town works. Jade is a character who arrives in the town in the first episode. He's a very specific type of charismatic asshole. The kind of guy who you'd probably punch in his smug face if you were confronted with him in real life, but who makes for a great TV character. He had just sold his tech startup for millions of dollars days before he arrived in the town, and he has an air of smug superiority about him throughout the whole show. Jade is initially convinced that the whole thing is a hoax, a trick being played on him specifically. Once the reality of the situation hits him, he starts trying to logic out the rules of this place. The difference between Jade and characters who we see try to explain the mystery away is that Jade accepts the situation is supernatural, but thinks that just because it's supernatural doesn't mean it's random or arbitrary. It makes no sense that the electricity works, sure, but it clearly does. Jade wants to figure out how, even if he can't explain why. It's common writing advice that it's really hard to write a smart character, because to write a smart character well, you have to think of smart things for them to do. In other words, a character can never be smarter than the person writing them. Jade is a great example of a smart character written well because he does think of smart things to do that no one else in town has managed to, and they work. Sometimes. In the first season of the show, Jade tries to figure out how to power a radio that someone had with them when they were brought into the town, to try to make contact with the outside world. The appliances found in the town work, they have power, but they have weird outlets that don't exist in the real world, so you can't just plug the radio in. No one has been able to use anything they brought with them from outside of town, just what they've found there. How would you handle this in real life? Well, you tap into the power grid. You just run a wire directly into a wire you already know has electricity running through it. But remember, the wires aren't real. They're not wires, they're just rubber all the way through. So how do you solve that problem? Here's what Jade eventually figures out, with some help from town mom Tian Chen. The wires don't work. The outlets don't work. Take all of that as a given, and yet, if you plug a lamp into the wall, the light bulb turns on. Somehow, doesn't matter how, that light bulb is getting electricity. So, Jade unscrews the light bulb and, to test his theory, exposes the wires on the cord of a hairdryer directly to the contacts in the socket of the lamp.
Whoa!
Ah, you see?
Voila. Power. It doesn't matter why it works. It only matters that it does. That's smart. While this show isn't operating under strict rules of reality, that feels like it might work within the logic of the show, and the show is wise enough to let it work. Jade believes that even if this place doesn't follow the rules of the world they understand, it must follow its own rules consistently, and in this case, he's proven correct. That makes the world feel internally consistent, which starts to build trust with the viewer for the larger mysteries spanning the whole show. At the same time, this shows us something important to know about Jade. He might be annoying because he always believes he's the smartest man in the room, but it seems like he's often right. As time goes on, Jade keeps trying to solve the mystery of the town. As he does, we watch the mystery drive him further and further into obsession and mania, and it raises the question: is the town messing with him? Did the town give him that victory with the electricity just to make him believe he could solve the town's mysteries? Mysteries that might have no solutions. Is he now going mad trying to solve the unsolvable, or does he just have to keep pushing to figure out how monsters and magic trees and impossible wires can all be harnessed to get everyone home? Another reason Lost is infamous for never answering any questions is because it saved most of the biggest answers for the end of the show. Things like the nature of the island or the smoke monster don't get proper explanations until the final season of the show. Lost did trickle out answers throughout its whole run. For example, Lost's most iconic mystery box, Season 1's Hatch, and what's inside of it is solved within the opening minutes of Season 2. There's a bunker down there, and a guy named Desmond. Season 2's big mystery is whether entering the numbers into the computer in the hatch every 108 minutes to save the world is real or not, and, again, that mystery is solved by the end of Season 2, when the survivors finally choose not to push the button and cause a catastrophic failure that results in the destruction of the hatch. But these smaller, specific questions weren't what people were talking about when they say Lost never answered any questions. What people actually meant was that Lost never solved the biggest mystery box of all. What is the island? At least, not in a way that can be summarized in a single word. The island is not purgatory, it's not a reality TV show, and it's not an alien ant farm. The closest we get is being told it's a cork in a bottle of evil, something which barely makes sense even when you realize it's literal, and that explanation doesn't come until the final episodes. Like Lost, From is tackling these smaller mysteries as the show goes on. Examples of questions that have been answered along the way include: where do the monsters go during the day? Where did they get the talismans? And where do the wires go? The third season finale in particular finally started to reveal answers to some of the larger mysteries, like what is the origin of the monsters? Why do some people like Jade and Tabitha get visions from the town while others don't? And what is the meaning of the strange symbol Jade keeps seeing everywhere? It has given me faith, and perhaps this faith will still be betrayed, we'll see, that they are going somewhere with all of this and have an endgame in mind. That's not to say From is a perfect show. It has its fair share of missteps and goofy moments. For example, the back half of the second season is built around a load-bearing nursery rhyme that some of the characters remember. The nursery rhyme in question, made up for the show, is, "They touch, they break, they steal, no one here is free. Here they come for three, unless you stop the melody." I know nursery rhymes can be a little creepy. There was a crooked man who walked a crooked mile and all that, but not only is From's nursery rhyme comically plot relevant, it also does not sound in a million years like an actual nursery rhyme. I've seen some fan theories for why this is. They're good, but the show hasn't confirmed any of them, so for the moment I'm side-eyeing that whole thread. Lost isn't the only show that I feel like From is, in some ways, learning from. When I compared From at the start of this video to Stephen King, I was actually referring to a very specific work that it reminds me of, Under the Dome. Disclaimer, I only watched the first season of Under the Dome. I stopped because I thought it was bad, but I have read the book, so I'm mostly referencing that. Under the Dome is a 2009 novel by Stephen King about a small town in, you'll never believe this, Maine, that's suddenly cut off from the outside world by a giant invisible dome that encases the town. Yes, exactly like the Simpsons movie. It was adapted into a TV series that ran for 3 seasons by showrunner Brian K. Vaughan, who is probably most well known for the comic books Y the Last Man and Saga, among others, but who also wrote for a TV show you might have heard of called Lost? I consider Under the Dome, especially the TV series, to be another of these big mystery stories, but like many other examples, the mystery itself is not the strongest element. That mystery is solved by the end of the book, and it's the weakest part of the book by far. The best part of Under the Dome is the drama of watching this small town that's been cut off from the outside world figure out how to survive without the infrastructure they've always relied on. It's not just supplies and aid the people of Chester's Mill are cut off from, but also consequences. When it becomes clear that not even the full might of the US military can breach the dome, it means a 2-bit car salesman can become a dictator, and there's nothing the outside world can do about it. When cut off from the consequences a broader world provides, people become the truest versions of themselves, and their internal squabbles and local politics cause them to ignore a much bigger, and what should be more obvious, threat. That's what makes the first half of the novel compelling. Really, the biggest problem with Under the Dome is its length. If Under the Dome were edited more tightly, and if the resolution of the mystery didn't feel so trite, heck, even if the mystery were left unresolved entirely, if the dome were something that simply appeared and then vanished without explanation, it would be a much stronger book about a town slowly falling apart without the social expectations of the outside world. That is the part of From that reminds me of Under the Dome. Unlike Lost, the day-to-day survival is mostly handled, at least in the first season. The people of the town have a farm, livestock, water, shelter. Their basic needs are met, and so it's the constant social pressure and supernatural threat that actually drives the show. It's not a one-to-one, though. No character in From is as truly evil as Big Jim is, but the ways these characters fail feel a bit truer to me. One of the first questions the show asks is, how do you keep people in such a hopeless and impossible situation going? And how far will you go to maintain an illusion of control? That is the question which Sheriff Boyd, Harold Perrineau's character, has to ask himself early on, and his arc doesn't go in the direction you might expect. When the show starts, the town is in something of a lull from the constant danger. It's been months since they lost a person. Sheriff Boyd has established a feeling of safety in this town of nightmares for the first time ever. That safety, however, relies on everyone following the rules perfectly. Boyd was not a sheriff before he came to the town. He was a military man. While there's some overlap there, Boyd has no experience leading and protecting civilians, people who won't always blindly follow orders in their day-to-day lives. He became the de facto leader of the town when he found the talismans that they used to protect themselves at night, greatly increasing the chances of survival of those trapped. More than that, though, he recognized that the people living there needed order, they needed structure, and most of all, they needed to believe that someone knew what they were doing if they were going to survive long term. So, he became something he wasn't, a sheriff, and built a somewhat safe structure inside of a nightmare. Unfortunately, that sense of safety is broken at the start of the show with that opening scene where a mother and daughter are killed while the father, Frank, was drunk at the town's bar. To get the town to follow his rules, for their own good, Sheriff Boyd established the Box, a small shed at the heart of the town where they would leave rule breakers to be torn apart by monsters as a form of public execution. He is providing consequences since the outside world no longer can. Since Frank broke the rules, specifically he'd been told anyone in town with children needed to nail their windows shut, he's considered responsible for the death of his wife and daughter and needs to be made an example of. Boyd never expected to need to use the Box and doesn't want to execute the town drunk for making a mistake, even if it did cost human lives. In a scene a few episodes in, Boyd goes and talks to Father Cautry, looking for an excuse to spare the man's life. Unexpectedly, Cautry tells him he needs to go through with the execution.
Let's say you absolve Frank of all his crimes. Then what? What happens next time? I mean, you warned him. On several occasions, very publicly, I might add. How do you think people are going to react? But you built a guillotine in the town square. What do you think happens when people realize you lack the conviction to use it?
You're a terrible fucking priest. You know that?
Despite this, Boyd still can't bring himself to execute Frank and repeatedly tries to give him an out. First, he tries to let him go from his cell, handing him a talisman and telling him to go spend the rest of his life hiding in a shack outside of the town. Frank refuses. Then, just before the execution, Boyd begins a speech to try to get the town to agree to granting Frank mercy, and once again, Frank refuses. Frank sees what Boyd doesn't want to, what Cautry told him. If this life they've established is going to survive, people have to follow the rules, and if people are going to follow the rules, then there have to be consequences. So, Frank willingly walks into the box and dies, despite Boyd trying to spare him. This is the core conflict at the heart of Boyd's character. He became something he's not to keep the town safe, but he doesn't contain it within himself to become an executioner. As the show goes on and more heinous crimes than Frank's are committed by the people of town, Boyd is confronted with the necessity of enforcing the rules he established, but he often isn't capable of doing so. He is a figure of authority who is scared to enforce that authority, and the show forces him to face the brutal reality that he can't have it both ways. That is a really interesting conflict for a character, and it leads to some great drama, especially with his counterpart, Donna. Donna is the leader of a second group of people living a bohemian lifestyle in a large house just outside of the heart of town called Colony House. Despite Colony House being far looser with its rules, with nightly parties and orgies, and a laissez-faire attitude, Donna is more of a hard-ass than Boyd or any other character in the town, and it often falls to her to drill the hard truth of the situation into newcomers who don't believe what's happening to them initially. At the start of the show, it seems like Donna and Boyd hate each other, and they fight like cats and dogs whenever they're in a scene together. As time goes on, though, and you see more of their dynamic, it becomes very clear that above all else, they respect each other. Donna is always the first one to call Boyd out on his bullshit, but she doesn't do it for kicks or to get one over on him. She does it because she knows the stakes are so high, someone needs to call Boyd out when he's wrong or wishy-washy. You need that when you're running a town. They have a fantastic dynamic, and Donna is a great character in her own right. This is a show with an extremely large ensemble cast, and everyone is written well and fills their own niche. I can't and won't go over everyone, obviously, but some highlights I haven't mentioned yet are Deputy Kenny and the town doctor Christy. Christy was an EMT in the outside world, but since she's the closest thing to a doctor the town has, that's the role she's been forced to step into. She and Kenny have clearly fallen for each other from the beginning of the show, but she keeps him at a distance because she already has a fiancé, a woman named Marielle, still waiting for her, she thinks, somewhere in the outside world. Our audience surrogate characters, the Matthews family, who we see get trapped inside of the town in the first episode. There's not really a main character in this show, it's a true ensemble, but as the Matthews have the rules of this supernatural place explained to them, we get to learn about it through their eyes. Then there's Father Cautry and Jade, who I talked about earlier, Boyd's estranged son Ellis and his girlfriend Fatima, who live in Colony House, Sarah, who's being given strange visions by the town, Kenny's mother, Tian Chen, who runs the town's diner despite speaking hardly any English. Hitting annoying people with a whisk is a universal language. The town's bartender, Tom, Victor, who has been stranded in the town for decades ever since he was a boy, and whose trauma has taken a toll on him. It's a very big cast, is what I'm saying, but all of these characters get their own storylines and important moments within the show. One of my favorite details about this show is that the cast of monsters is also consistent. They're not omnipresent, there's only a handful of them stalking the town, and you start to recognize them between episodes. There's the nurse, the cowboy, the milkman, and my personal favorite, Alfred E. Newman. If you're not sold on the show's Not Quite Vampires, I do want to reiterate that they are only one of several supernatural creatures the show deals with. I don't want to talk specifics about anything that happens after the first season here, because again, I want you to go watch this show yourself, but seasons 2 and 3 both focus on a new supernatural threat facing the town, with the main creatures becoming more of a background threat that is constantly looming. The monsters we see in Season 2 especially are much stranger. So that's my pitch for why you should watch From. The characters are excellent, the interpersonal drama is compelling, and the mystery is intriguing. It is the best one of these we've gotten since The Leftovers, I think? If you have any fondness in your heart for shows like this, or if you want to see what a version of Lost with much tighter pacing might look like, this is a must-watch show. From's 4th season is scheduled to release sometime next year, and I can't wait. I'm excited to see what happens to these characters, and to find out more of this strange town's secrets. If you're already a From fan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show in the comments down below, and if you haven't seen the show yet, I hope I've intrigued you to give it a look. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you do. Thank you as always to my YouTube channel members and my patrons at patreon.com/Zuldim. If you'd like to get update posts on what I'm working on and exclusive videos, check out the link in the description or hit join down below. I'm recording this part later and I'm sick, so today's credits will sound like they're being read by a corpse. Chaotic. Pizza Requiem. Dookie Wave. Rules in Place. Raxarox, Unhealthy Caillou, Sir Darkon, Aurelia 14, Alan Fortes, Sam P. from New Zealand, Schmandolf the Schmay, Kirsten, Captain Swing, Der Freischütz, Devale, Mouse V, Lieria, Theo D, Noah Phoenix, Dangerous Corpse, Gassan Abanura, Patrizia Frabetti, Sninkelberg, Ziggy the 31st, Frondi, Yo-Yo Jojo Mojo, Tsai Voafehi, Dan Luther, Jose Armalos, William, Cabbage, Rekka, Alex Smith, Pete Lee, Shiny Empty Head, That's All, Bell Mage, and Malachi Murphy. Until next time, everyone, take care.